Hello, bird nerds. Hello, bird nerds. I had to leave that screen on just for editing purposes there. Um, it's great to be back with you, bird nerds. I'm Grant. I'm a bird nerd. I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri country in Melbourne, Australia. And I'm joined today by one of our neighbours from across the ditch, Aotearoa, New Zealand, Ariel Heswall, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Auckland. Ariel, welcome to the Bird Emergency. You're a sensory ecologist. Tell us what that is.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me. It's such an honor and privilege to be here. Yeah, so I study sensory ecology, which is practically the study of how animals and other plants perceive the environment and how they interact with each other using their sensory features. For example, how do animals find food? How do they avoid predation? And how do they find their mates, all using their sensory features? So that's practically the what a sensory ecologist studies. And I use this on seabirds and how they perceive their environment.
And the focus of what we're going to talk about is the work that you've been doing and the extended work that um, so many teams of people have been doing on light pollution uh, on birds, both affecting their behaviour, perhaps affecting their regular movements, and some of the um tragic effects that can have. And we're also going to talk about plastic pollution, which is never too far away from our minds when we're talking about any seabirds. But it might surprise people to know that New Zealand is sort of becoming the uh, focus of this kind of research around the world. Probably one reason, I'm supposing here, um, Ariel, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that it's because Auckland is so close to some major colonies of birds, and that they're moving through to Australia. So there's a lot of people on this side of the Tasman Sea who can follow up. It's not to downplay the work that's going on in Europe and in South America and Central America on the Pacific Islands as well, but there's a real concentration in seabird research at all the universities in New Zealand and of course here in UTAS. So um, good stuff. Tell us a little bit about the the aims of your PhD research and the methodology, and then we'll get into some of the uh, groovy images and talk to those.
Sure. Well, the overall aim is to just look at how seabirds perceive light pollution and plastic pollution in terms of the different colors of lights and colors of plastic. So, color is a very big thing for as part of my PhD. And I look at it and how the seabird sees it for itself, not how us humans perceive the plastic or the light, but how the seabirds do, because they're the ones who are interacting with it and becoming harmed by it. And so we need to look at it. I'm looking at it from their own perspective. And I do this by doing little experiments, little trials, testing different colors of lights and plastic colors, as well as then using a bunch of statistics to model it into the seabird's vision. And then we can look at it from the seabird's perspective.
Um, how do you um, how, what equipment do you use to measure that, and how do you know what uh, a seabird is perceiving? So I'll just put up while you're talking. I'll just put up some of the shots of you sort of collecting information. So.
Yes, so that was at Tawharanui where we were looking at light attraction. We collaborated with the Northern New Zealand Seabird Trust on those ones. And so we're looking at different colours of lights and if they were more attractive or not. And how we look at it from a seabird's perspective is that we have a little device, which is a spectrometer. And so this captures the wavelengths and the reflection and the transmissions of the lights. And then we're able to use that data to then model it into a seabird's vision. And the seabird's vision we obtain it from past research and papers as which looks at the peak wavelength which a seabird can see. So if we get the eyeball physiology and the anatomy of a seabird, past researchers have looked at what wavelengths of light really excites the seabird's cones and rods in the retina, and it also looks at the oil droplets and things. So it's a very complicated way, but which has only been done in so far a couple of seabird species. And by using that data, that's how we can see how a seabird actually perceives the environment, because they actually have that their eyeball vision with the rods and cones.
So, um, I'm interested in how that information is collected. Like, is that similar? I mean, to use the kind of imagery that so much of us would be familiar with, is when you see people with the skull cap on their head with all the little magnets around it, and then they're being showed different images or on screens, and then the brain waves are being mapped. Is that the kind of process that people have gone through to know whether the rods and cones are being triggered in a seabird?
Sadly, it's not. It's
So
it.
how, how do you know if the rods and cones are being triggered when different spectrums of light are being directed to them?
So we need it requires very fresh eyeball, and it needs to be, sadly the seabird has to be dead at the time, and so it needs a fresh eye. And then they use, I can't remember the exact equipment, but they shine a bunch of electrons, they shoot a bunch of electrons in and light wavelengths at the eye, and then it stimulates it. And
Okay. So if the eyeball is fresh enough, it's like, you know, it's like if the body is still quivering, kind of thing. That those processes that would happen in a live bird are triggered and are able to be measured by some kind of spectrometer or resonance imagery or something. So the nervous system is still reacting through the optic nerve and the retina. Um, okay, so cool. I had this image of all of these seabirds that have been collected from, you know, dropping on the ground or, you know, in to the lights of fishing or research vessels, and they go, all right, let's put the skull cap on the little fella. And
I mean, as much as like that would probably be better than the bird dying.
that's the sad thing. Um, I'm not sure whether this would affect the results, but obviously the only cohort of specimens that you can examine are dead ones. So, so the birds that exhibit one characteristic in their behaviour are the only ones that you can study.
For the eyeball physiology.
Yeah. Because you don't have any data from the birds that haven't been attracted and come to some demise because of their behaviour with light.
Yeah, so with that, it has to be super fresh. So it needs to be like absolutely freshly dyed, which there's some studies actually being conducted in Hawaii. And she's actually under Hannah Moon. She's a PhD student there, and she's managing to get the wavelengths there to add to some more of the data and have the bird freshly dead and like euthanize it. And so to get ethics and permits to do that, no, beforehand in the past we used to go and just like shoot a dead seabird and like collect it from that. But nowadays, like it's very, very rare to get the peak wavelengths. So even if it doesn't have to be species specific if you got ethics and permits, but you know, you're most likely not going to get those ethics and permits because it's direct. You'd have, unless the bird was actually dying, then you're not going to be able to do that.
Now, of course, the internet dropped you out just on that really specific bit about Hannah's research. So, can you tell us again about what she's discovered and what she's studying? I think we got the gist about how difficult it is to do this kind of research and getting the appropriate ethical clearance from your institution and perhaps the government. But what's her focus and how is she doing it?
Yeah, so she's doing a similar thing. So she's also looking at light pollution and how it also affects some Hawaiian birds with her lab. And she also, so she's also got ethics and permits to look at the spectral and measure the spectral sensitivities of the eyeballs with the seabirds there. And she's yet to publish, and I believe that's as much as I am aware of what she's doing. But she's doing some amazing work to help contribute and build up that database.
Seabirds is a really general or wide category. So do you know whether she's focusing on shearwaters or petrels or
the Hawaiian petrel as one of them, and which is endangered petrel in Hawaii, and also I believe the what else was she do? The Newell shearwater. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Of course, regular listeners and viewers will know that's the focus of this show. Generally, is endangered birds. So this fits in really nicely. Your work's a little bit more general in terms of the species that you've been covering, but just on that endangered bird thread, have you been analysing much data of birds that are either endangered or worldwide or in New Zealand specifically?
Probably. I wouldn't say they've been my seabird species have been very endangered. The ones which I'm focusing, probably the closest to probably being rare or endangered would be the black petrel, which is extremely susceptible to bycatch. And there's been some data on over 600 black petrels were caught in fishing gear a year. And we've had black petrels being susceptible to light pollution. And black petrel is probably one of the rarest ones and then more endangered, I believe. The Cook's petrels is another one. It's more of a relict species, so it was once very widespread, but is now only really on Little Barrier Island, Great Barrier Island, and Codfish Island. And those ones are very susceptible to light pollution. Yes.
Those three islands, they've all had the invasive predators eradicated, haven't they?
Just really Little Barrier. I believe they're really working on Codfish Island, but Little Barrier is predator free, which is a great place. Yeah.
I'm testing my memory, but I think is Codfish Island, Kakapo, and some of the penguins also on that island.
There's also a really critically endangered Whenua diving petrel, which the Department of Conservation is monitoring, and those are also very susceptible to light pollution.
Yeah. I think that's what's triggering me for Codfish Island. That one.
Yeah.
I'll have to put a map up because tell us where Codfish Island is in relation to, well, Australian listeners and maybe those around the world might know that Auckland's on the North Island, and that when we're talking about kakapo and some of the penguins down on the southern end of the South Island. So where is Codfish Island in relation to Auckland?
Yes, so Codfish Island is Codfish Island is way down in the South
So
Island.
it's
Like,
right down at the south. Yep, yep. So
yeah, it's close
it's in that
to an island. Yeah.
Kakapo region, shall we? Okay, good. Okay, let's get back on track and have a look at let's talk about what happens to a seabird that has a reaction to our. Actually, no. Let's set up the scene. What have we done with artificial light? Like these birds. Let's explain their habit. They're out fishing all day, generally, aren't they? Out to sea. So if they stayed out at sea all the time, this wouldn't be such a drama for them. But their habit is that in the breeding season, particularly, they are coming back to a colony on land. Now, we've gone and put street lights up, hoardings on billboards, fluorescent lights of different colours to advertise products that make us fat and lazy. What are the dangerous spectrums for these birds that are coming back to light? Like, is it back to their colony, to their nesting burrows, or just coming back to rest? Is there a particular kind of light that is problematic?
Yes, so there's been a bunch of some studies done recently on this, and there's been some studies done on in Australia, I believe, in Southeast Australia. Can't remember the name of the island, but they tested to see if metal halide, light emitting diodes, and also high pressure sodium lights, because those were on the island, and they were just testing which ones were more attractive to I believe, the short-tailed shearwaters which breed there. And it turns out that the metal halide was much more attractive for the seabirds compared to the light-emitting diodes and the high-pressure sodium lights. And so a lot of the time we seem to adopt more LEDs because it does seem to have a reduction of the impact. However, it's not really it's the lesser of the two evils. It's not the greatest, but it does have seen a reduction in the seabird attractions. But there's also been some research on different colors of lights, because along the spectral wavelengths, it is often been it's often theorized that seabirds and other birds can see UV light. And also they see, because they see a lot more than humans. Humans are, for their vision, human vision, they're trichromatic, which means they can really see the red and blue and I believe green. Oh my goodness, I'm getting, mind is going somewhere. But birds now can also, a lot of the birds are supposedly being able to see UV as well. So and lights, a lot of them can emit UV as well. So it can be very attractive and disorientating for them. And that's a very important factor to consider. There's been some, I believe Australia has emitted now some guidelines to reduce light pollution and try and conserve the environment, and to help save and conserve other seabirds, shorebirds, and animals which are affected by light pollution. And as part of the guidelines, I believe they suggest to use LEDs, which have been filtered from UV and blue. And so those ones, until further research is done, are most likely your best options, especially the short wavelength ones. But it is also tricky because it's also very species dependent. So some seabird species and other migratory bird species may or may not actually be attracted to the blue light or red light. It's very, very species dependent and location dependent.
And just to give people an idea of what kind of uses metal halide lights are used for, um, outdoors, it's generally that commercial lighting, industrial lighting. It's to light up the billboard on the factory, the big advertising on the shopping strip malls, public space like security lighting, lighting paths if it's required really bright. That's usually metal halide. All the parking lots around shopping centres, that's generally metal halide. Sports arenas, the lightings, they're moving away from it, as you mentioned, Ariel. For the big professional sporting grounds, they're often moving away from the worst kind of lighting, but all the suburban uh, rugby grounds, soccer grounds, and whatnot that are and netball courts that are run on a shoestring, if they've got old lighting, it's going to be metal halide, and it's probably going to remain there. People, the budgets for this is pretty tight, but of course, new lighting is being moved away. Um, so yeah, you are right. There have been some guidelines in a lot of places about what we should use. I'm just looking if there was LEDs are preferable because they last a lot longer than metal halide bulbs and whatnot too. So, and because it's a modern form of lighting, you can often vary the spectrum. Um, so if you've got people around, maybe if you're lighting up your outdoor patio, you can set the spectrum. If you want it to be bright for that time, you can turn it up, but then you can set it back down to a less damaging spectrum. So, with that preamble, tell us what you've discovered about which, what's the most damaging or dangerous in terms of attracting birds, changing their behaviour and attracting them to places where they shouldn't be, and what are the effects on those birds? Like, what is happening to those birds that are being altered, behaviour altered?
Yes. So we're actually got a paper in press and about to be released on not about to be released. We've resubmitted it for major revisions in PeerJ at the PeerJ journal at the moment, and we talk about where seabirds are becoming grounded in Auckland City and how light pollution is affecting that. And there is a very high chance and very distinct chance that light pollution, the more intense the light pollution is, such as in like CBD areas where light is more concentrated, where there's a lot more urban sky glow, this is most likely going to affect our seabirds as more are becoming attracted, disorientated, and end up grounding on the curbside and people's backyards, even, but beside lighting, street lights, and as well, often what they're found there. And it's very species specific in different parts of the world as well. It's also species specific on like probably maybe during the different times of the year that affects when seabirds are breeding. They could be more likely to cross over and more likely to be succumb to the lights. We're also seeing in different parts of New Zealand like some seabirds, there have been some reports of deck strike, which is when the seabird collides with fishing vessels from the lights. In some reports in different parts of the country, you see some more species being attracted to the lights, such as white-chinned petrels. It's attracted to the fishing vessels down there, mainly because white-chinned petrels are found more further south, and they rarely find cooked petrels being attracted to the fishing vessels down there. Whereas up here in Auckland, we're seeing that there's a lot more Cook's petrels attracted to the lights, and we've hardly seen any white-chinned petrels which have been attracted to the lights here in Auckland. So it's very location dependent, and it's very location dependent and species dependent, but generally light in general is, especially the more intense light, that's most likely more attractive for seabirds.
So those two examples that you've given there, I think are quite different, but let's see whether do you know what type of light it is generally on those fishing vessels that are attracting the white-chinned petrels?
So I believe some of the fishing vessels they use I believe they did use LEDs. They are, some fishermen have said that actually blue light and green light, they were less likely to attract the seabirds. However, some other fishermen suggested that red light was actually, we had less seabirds attracted during red lights. And some more studies are being done by that on if red or blue or green light are more attractive or not. So and in terms of that, definitely fishing vessels and deck strike, you can see a bit of a difference with that, and compared to say groundings in urban areas. But it's definitely something species and location orientated as well.
Now, what I'm thinking of those two examples, just thinking about the differences and what would be common with them, I'm thinking that the fishing vessels have navigation lights which are sort of a lower power than what they might be using for shining down on decks or to examine nets or pots or whatever is off the ground. So that would be concentrated down rather than up. So my train of thought there is that those downward powerful concentrated lights are going to affect birds that are close already to the vessel. That's what I'm thinking. And that their navigation lights, which might be different kinds of lights and different spectrums, are going to attract birds that are further away if there's any attraction. But your city, Auckland, has that glow that we all know from driving over a hill as we're coming home from late from a party or a weekend trip away or something, and you come back and you see the glow of the city. And that's a whole stack of mixed types of lights and mixed spectrums and mixed strengths, power of the lights. So they're two different kinds of situations and different effects. Let's talk about the city. I'm guessing that we're not seeing with seabirds the kind of catastrophic bird strike that we get with migratory birds hitting glass obstacles like that. We're getting birds that are confused and disoriented. In effect, they're lost. Is that correct? Have I got the right slant on the birds?
Yeah. So a lot of the birds which are grounded and come into rehabilitation centers are often young fledglings, and this is also seen in Hawaii and also islands such as in the Canary Islands and the Mediterranean. And they're often fledglings which are taking flight for the first time. And as they are heading off to their foraging grounds, sometimes there is there's the city lights and the street lights was, and this for very naive young birds, it's been theorized this is very attractive for them and disorientating, and so they often end up smacking into buildings. We've seen a lot of head injuries come in, broken wings, very traumatic internal bleedings.
Okay, so
Yeah,
so that catastrophic bird strike collisions is part of this problem,
can
rather than
happen. Yeah.
just birds that are being confused and disoriented. But talking about those juvenile, sort of immature, naive birds, uh, I don't know enough about the behavioural studies of migratory seabirds or habitual birds, moving out to shore and back. But if it's young birds predominantly, uh, is that because they haven't learned their their routes of where to go? Like, um, I don't think we really understand yet how birds know where to go in their patterns really well. But is that it? Do you think that they're being lured by the light because they haven't got that ingrained navigational sense, whatever that is?
So in general, we don't really know the answer to that. There are a couple of theories as to why they could be attracted and disorientated by the lights. Some studies have suggested that the light is, they could confuse the light with their navigational aid, with the moon and the stars and the celestial bodies, and so they get a bit confused, especially as they're leaving their burrows for the first time. And also, some other theories suggest that the prey items which some of the seabirds prey on sometimes bioluminesce, and so give off a little bit of light. So there is a theory and speculation that potentially they mistake the lights for a food source of the bioluminescent prey. And however, we don't actually know the true reason. We need a lot more science and research done on that. But in general, these lights are very attractive for the younger seabirds. And this is a grey-faced petrel, which was just released last time, and yeah, he was attracted towards the lights and slammed into someone's backyard window. And luckily, though, he had no major injuries and was able to be released about a month later. And we also see a lot of Cook's petrels during the month of March to April. And many of these ones are fledglings, and they're a good proportion of them are actually released afterwards. But sadly, the ones who don't make it, often it's because they have internal bleeding, wing injuries, and severe head trauma. But yeah, so in general, we really don't really know the reason why these birds are attracted towards the lights. We have the couple of theories. Is most likely they've mistaken it as a prey item or maybe as a navigational aid. And also, us as humans, when we have a bright light shone at us, we're often a bit disorientated. It's like, oh, suddenly that came out of nowhere. And so probably as well, similar, they might also be like, oh, what's this bright light? And yeah, that's could be some of the reasons.
Now, as you mentioned, this bird had a happy ending, fortunately, and look at that. There, there's you about to let that same bird go, isn't it?
Yes, he was
So,
very happy to be back out.
um, uh, that that's pretty great vision of the coastline, the ruggedness of the coastline behind you there. So, just tell us whereabouts you are, where you've released him, and where you expect him, where you expect him to end up, and hopefully he doesn't come back to the lights. But
True. So we released them along Auckland's western beaches, and these beaches actually have a lot of grey-faced petrel burrows, and a lot of breeding colonies breed around there. And so we released them out there because we knew that he also he was found along the western beaches, and so we released him there, hoping that his burrow was close by, or at least he can fly nearby to his burrows. And because that we released him when it was dusk and getting darker, so that these grey-faced petrels, they are diurnal, which means they most humans, we are awake during the day and then sleep during the night. And so usually these birds fly out to sea during the day, forage, and then return at night. So we released them just as it was getting darker so that he can return to his burrow, and hopefully he found it, and fingers crossed he's now out foraging for squid and other fishies.
So that picture I've got up there now, which is the sort of light conditions that you would be preferably releasing into, dusk, so he can get to the burrow. Just tell us about the grey-chinned petrel habits. Are they a resident sedentary species? Like they're out at sea during the day, but are they returning to the same burrow all year?
Yes. So the grey-faced petrels, and most seabirds themselves. Oh, that's all good. Yeah, most seabirds are actually very highly philopatric, which means that they usually return to the same breeding spot most years. There can be interchangeable. There have been some seabirds, which were actually banded. So a band is when they just sort of like put a metal ring around the bird's legs so that they're able to identify them, see where they've been in the future, and also where they have been. And some birds have been found to which were born on, I think, the East Coast, have actually been found now breeding on the West Coast. And so it can be interchangeable, but a good chunk of them will remain at the site they were born in.
Now, we've just been talking then about the breeding colony, the breeding burrows. Is the problem of the light attractiveness, is that a problem that is only a breeding season issue when the birds are coming to that location? Where do they go in the non-breeding period? And are they just going to other localities with light, or are they staying at sea, or are they roosting on remote islands that don't have the light problem yet?
So there is most likely a trend that the seabird has to be around, and also that the light pollution, so they need to be in the right area, and also the seabird has to be there in order to succumb to the light attraction. Cook's petrels, and often when they migrate off, they're migrating off to South America, and also some parts of North America they migrate off to during the non-breeding season. And I don't think much research has been done on what happens to them if they're succumbing to a lot of light pollution over on the east side of the Pacific. But certainly when they return, we have seen actually some Cook's petrels being brought into rehab around September, October. Not many. These birds could have just been very tired from the long journey, but mainly, yes, during the breeding season. Also, it's seen around in other islands as well with seabirds. Usually it's during the breeding season that they're more likely to succumb, because there's actually some studies, recent studies actually in the UK, which has seen that adults can be repelled by the lights. So it's a very interesting find which they found, because it seems that may potentially lights are more attractive for fledglings, and however for the adults it's not as it might not be as attractive. And it seems we most likely have a similar trend with the birds which have been brought into rehab in New Zealand as well from light pollution.
Yeah, it raises a lot of questions, doesn't it? Because if it was common for most seabirds to be attracted to light when they were mature, you would think that when we're watching the cricket or the rugby or the soccer, that it would be more than silver gulls that are turning up on the playing surfaces, at the end of a game or before the game, and that isn't the case. So, be really interesting to see what other research turns up globally, that might fill in some of the puzzles.
We do really have a lot of work to do in terms of this with light pollution and the behavior of seabirds, and we've only just started to scratch the surface.
Yeah, and especially when you realize how species specific it is. I mean, how many petrels are there? How many species of petrels are there worldwide? I think you've got about 20 odd just in New Zealand, just in the Auckland region, I think.
Yeah, we've got I believe there's over 340 species of seabirds worldwide, and New Zealand is a hot spot with over 25% of those seabirds breeding here, and many of them are endemics, such as the buller shearwater, only found breeding so far on the Poor Knights Island. And they're potentially due to differences in behavior, foraging. We're still trying to figure this out. But there was one incident in 2018 when some cruise ship lights were shining off Little Barrier Island, and about approximately 60 to 80 bullers shearwater and some flesh-footed shearwaters sadly succumbed and collided with the lights from the cruise ship, and most of them sadly didn't make it. And when I was looking at those as part of my PhD, and most of them were fledglings. Yeah, a good chunk of fledglings.
When we bring up all the different kinds of examples of where seabirds are being affected, it's a massive, massive problem. I mean, you've got depending on the light, you've got potentially every coastal settlement, every navigational aid, one kind of problem. Every fishing vessel is a kind of problem. Then every recreational vessel is a problem. And then every tourist vessel is a problem. And every transport vessel may be a problem. And you just wonder how many of those at sea instances have really ever been recorded. I would think that so many of them, they just go, oh look, a dead black or grey or whitey bird on the deck. Oh well, toss it over.
Yeah, sadly, it's very underreported because, especially since a lot of the people and the workers, they genuinely aren't aware that this is a huge issue, and with a lot more coverage and awareness being raised in the media and places, a lot more people are starting to realize that, this bird is not supposed to be here and not supposed to be attracted to, and is attracted by the lights. In Auckland, we're now starting to raise awareness for this for the bird of the year, where I'm helping to campaign for the Cook's Petrel for bird of the
I
year.
thought you'd be on Team Cookie.
Yes. So we're doing that. I do the social media for Cook's Petrels for Cookie, and it's just really to just raise awareness for people that so that when people see the Cook's Petrels, don't they don't just dish it aside as just another bird, or they think it's supposed to be there, because often we've had people call up Birdcare Aotearoa saying that, oh, we think we found a pigeon. We don't actually know what this is, but it looks hurt. And
It's a weird looking pigeon.
So it's just some people think it's a seagull, which I mean, I cannot. Yes, at least they're like interested in helping, and so it's just great to have more awareness. And actually, since this year, we had a bit of media coverage, and some people have actually called me up and said that, oh, from what I saw in the news, I think I found a Cook's Petrel. And so they brought it to me at the University of Auckland, and then I was able to take it to Birdcare Aotearoa. And so it's just great having more awareness, and that's what we need more, is that to people to be more aware.
Certainly. Let's talk about Bird of the Year, New Zealand, and Cook's Petrel a bit more in a minute. But I wanted to follow up the media, the PR that you're getting in New Zealand about light pollution as it affects birds, particularly. There's a pretty. I want to compare it with what I see here. Now, I'm not a big consumer of commercial media anymore, but I do make a point of trying to catch a couple of the morning magazine shows, Dawn in, whichever capital city, kind of show, and the evening news on a couple of networks, just to see what's being said and whether any conservation environment issues get in the news. Now, the Dark Skies movement gets quite a lot of publicity and press, and there's a number of personalities that regularly do meteorological / astronomy kind of segments in the media talking about it, but it's always in relation to stargazing, to photography of the night sky, of looking at celestial bodies moving across the sky. I can't think of one instance I've seen in that kind of setting, or even hearing it on the radio, where anyone's talked about the impact of seabirds here. There's a little bit of talk about diurnal bird strike issues, but in New Zealand, is it now becoming something that the mainstream media is talking about, and that people like yourself and the Ecolights team, or are actually being invited on to speak to, Dolly and Steve on the couch, about bird strike?
It's definitely caught a lot of media coverage. Not We have had some interviews with Birdcare and the Cook's Petrels. That's the closest we've had to interview, and also a radio interview. So it's definitely coming up there, and a lot more people are becoming interested in this, because it's grown over the years. The number of reported Cook's Petrels which have arrived at Birdcare Aotearoa has substantially increased. We were hardly getting any in 2018, and now in 2021 it's just shot up. We're getting hundreds of Cook's Petrels coming in, and so this is creating a lot more, oh, we really need to do something about this sort of thing. And it could be due to it could be due to a combination of both. The population on Little Barrier is booming. It's doing very well, and so there's a lot more Cook's Petrels around. But also, as the as more humans enter into Auckland City, lights are on more lighting, more urban sprawl. Even in towards western beaches and the more rural areas, we're seeing to see a lot more just lights dotting up everywhere, and just with more light pollution, most likely going to see a bigger chance. And so that's really is starting to capture the media's attention, where especially since it's happening in Auckland, New Zealand's largest city, and especially since we're next to this global seabird hotspot, where so many different seabirds are breeding here. And it is becoming quite of a hot topic, and we'll probably get more media coverage during the next Cook's Petrel season, which is in March to May. And we've also I've actually started these CBD Cook's Petrel patrols with where we get a bunch of volunteers and we go around the parts of the CBD looking for Cook's Petrels. We started a bit too late in the year, so we didn't really find much in the CBD, but some people actually found some before us and reported it to us, and after us as well. So at least the seabirds were found. And we're going to be doing those starting in March. As soon as the first Cook's Petrel arrives in bird care, Aotearoa, we will start the CBD Cook's Petrel patrols with the volunteers and monitor around Auckland City CBD.
If somebody wants to be involved in the cookie patrol, how do they go about getting involved and putting their name forward?
Oh, you could always contact me. My Twitter handle is here, and also just get in contact. I would gladly help add you to the list, and we'll be very, very keen for more volunteers to help search for lost Cook's Petrels.
Yeah. Of course, it's Ariel Heswall on Twitter, and I will of course put links there. Now, can they also get you on that website, Ariel?
Yeah, they can contact me there. Yes.
There we are. So, surprised you didn't I? That I had that prepared for precisely this moment. So there we are. And that's arielheswall.wixsite.com/website. And I'm pretty sure that all the links, by the time you get around to seeing and hearing this, will be at thebirdemergency.com/Ariel. So there we are. So that bird of the year, tell us what that is. You're obviously one of the integral parts of Team Cookie, as I've dubbed it. But who runs Bird of the Year in New Zealand? Who are the contenders? What's the hot competition?
Yes, so Forest and Bird, which is a branch, I believe, of Department of Conservation, but Forest and Bird is the organizer of Bird of the Year, and it's great to raise awareness and conservation issues for birds in New Zealand. And also Bird of the Year happens around the world as well. I believe Australia has one every couple of years. They do a Bird of the Year. But yes, so in New Zealand, it's very, very competitive, and a lot of people love their birds. So we've had probably the most competition we're going to have for this year for Cook's Petrels will probably be there's one which is very the black stilt is actually campaigning very well, which is the kaki. And so they're doing really well. And also we have some other contenders such as the kotare, which is the sacred kingfisher. The hoiho, or the yellow-eyed penguin, has now entered into their campaign, and they're also doing very well. And also paradise shell ducks as well. And we have a wide range. And last year, New Zealand bat won the Bird of the Year, which caused a lot of upset across many of the birding community. And so the Bat of the Year contender has dropped out. So now it's going to be birds for the Bird of the Year. So, and Another big contender will be the Toroa, which is the New Zealand albatross, the Royal Albatross. And I believe that came in second or third last year. So he'll probably be a big contender for Cookie. But fingers crossed we can get Cookie up there to just help with his conservation. And yeah, go Cookie.
And let's note that Southern Royal Albatross behind me on my backdrop. Thank you, Steph Burrell, for the photograph. But they are not in New Zealand on that photo. I was just checking the forestandbird.org.nz website, and I couldn't easily find Bird of the Year. So I'm wondering, do they have a separate Bird of the Year website? Is it birdoftheyear.org or something?
Yeah, you might have to.
How does someone vote, or is it only happening on Twitter or Facebook, or where, where do
So I
people?
believe it opens in October. Voting opens in October. I believe
Oh,
it's
there we go.
15th.
That's why I can't find it, because it's not even up yet.
We're just campaigning like crazy down here. Yeah, and it'll be
well,
I believe it's a separate webpage. It's called Bird of the Year. So
yeah.
just if you Google search Bird of the Year New
I'll,
Zealand, it should be birdoftheyear.com.
I'll link. I'll
Yeah,
find it.
great.
I really enjoy these competitions that go mental on Twitter. I've got to congratulate you. I didn't know that you were the social media campaigner for Cookie. It's
The
been dominating my feed, very much like when Best of Crest is going. It just everywhere. So that's great. Congratulations.
Bird Aotearoa is the campaign manager, and it was but Cookie was my idea, and also my boyfriend's idea as well. So and it just we brought forth our idea for like this is what we want to do for social media, and yeah, did the social media part, and but yeah, and it's a big thanks also to Bird Aotearoa for helping with the campaign. Yeah.
I have to say, Aotearoa New Zealand have got so many cool birds. Now I say that coming from Australia, where we have so many cool birds,
You two
but
have beautiful
uh,
birds.
but you guys name them in a really cool way as well, and just so much personality. I mean, you've got two of the most amazing parrots, obviously. Um, you've got the takahe, as you said, the kaka.
The Tereo name for Cook's petrel is Titi, which actually means squeak, and it's such a fitting name because the Cook's petrels or Titi will actually squeak. That's what some of their calls. And another amazing name there's a really small bird which is called a rifleman, and
Oh
its Tereo
yeah,
name.
yeah.
They're so cute, very small, very green birds. And the te reo name is Titipunamu, which practically translates as squeaky green stone, which is it's very cute and very appropriate for that bird.
There was an amazing photo about 2 or 3 days ago that was being shared like crazy on Twitter of the.
Oh,
I can't even. I'm not even going to have a go at the Maori name of the rifleman.
so good.
I'd have to practice to get anywhere near close. But yeah, you got some great birds. I mean, even your version of the grey fantail. What what do you call that over there?
Oh, yeah, we have a couple of more. The Piwaka Waka.
Yeah, P Waka Waka. Pretty cool
Yes.
name for a grey fantail, I've got to say. Uh, they're great. Okay, well, let's sort of move away from light in a second. Just tell us what you think. Well, your your research is. You've still got a year to go, haven't you, before you'll
Yes,
be
a year plus.
finished?
Yeah.
So based on what you've found out during the courses of the study that you've been doing, where have you sort of altered your focus, or is there more data collection that you need to do before you move into analysis?
So practically the lighting section has been done. That's done. That's been analyzed. That section is good. I'm now analyzing, doing the stats on the plastic part of
Right.
my
Hold off
PhD.
on plastic. Hold off on plastic. We're getting there. Uh, so you, you are you using a lot of other people's data as well to in your analysis alongside what you've collected yourself?
Um, Rarely the actually, yeah, there is a, I have done a literature review, but that's probably the only one which uses other people's research data for, as like, you know, the literature review. So I look at the literature and then do some analysis from that. Otherwise, like, it's been the data which I've collected myself, or has been from Birdcare Aotearoa, which has been from, I've also helped build up that database, so it's helped contribute. Yeah, but yeah, it's
Okay.
mainly my own ones. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, part of your work is analysing plastics. Now, it's slightly different to how we've covered plastics on this show before, but just to set the scene, I'm going to play a video that if you regularly watch um, the show, you will have seen before. But this is from the Adrift Labs team, the work that they have been doing on flesh-footed shearwaters on Lord Howe Island. But we'll just
Oh,
let.
look at some of those sizes.
Do you want to grab some tweezers with me again?
Do you want me to help take things
Yeah, because I need to grab the other stuff quickly. God, look at all the water in him still from last night. What the actual fuck? Literally just soup in there. Oh, look at what was stuck in his throat. Oh my god. Okay, I should be able to work from here.
How would you describe that video, Ariel?
It's just awful. It's just, and yeah, it just shows the extent of what can happen with plastic in the marine environment if a bird was really was interested in it, and it will just fill up the stomach. There's also been records found in the white-faced storm petrels in South Island of New Zealand with just gut contents full of plastic. It's the awful reality which can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks to the Adrift Lab team from UTAS, Jennifer Lavers, and the rest of the team, I've of course got an interview. You can meet the team and check that out. I think the link for that, the easy link, was thebirdemergency.com/adrift. Now your focus is not the ingestion of the plastic and the effects because of the ingestion so much in your research, but as you mentioned, plastic is ubiquitous in the marine environment, and it's why we've talked about it a number of times on the show. You have found bits of glass as well as plastic, but all kinds of litter is out there in the environment. That's your piece from a black-backed gull that you found in the gut. But your research is really focusing on what what colours, what again light spectrums are reflected from from plastics and whether birds are attracted to certain types of plastic. Have I got that? Have I summarised that properly?
Yes, yeah.
And then,
There's a
of course, if they are, they ingest it, and then all the other effects happen. So, just wanted to preface that. And the point of running the video is to show that one bird can be stuffed full of this stuff if they are attracted. Now, we discussed with the Adrift team that it might be that they mistake it for food or something like that. But there's the other slant that you're looking at, which is maybe they're not thinking it's food at all. It might be that the light spectrum causes them to be attracted to it, maybe because it resembles food, but it's not really it's not the shape or the size or things like that which might be attracting it. So, working in the lab,
yeah.
I'll just run through some of these. You can tell us how you do the
Yeah.
how do you determine what the spectrum of light being reflected is from the plastic, and just tell us the different types of plastic, what they are, and what you've found out.
Yes, so there's a bunch of us doing some research with plastics at the University of Auckland, and we're just trying to figure out if there is a preference for certain colors, and we do that by like noting down the color and things, just like doing some spectral reflectance of it. And we're all about the color in the lab, so we look at colors and we actually see maybe they do prefer certain colors because it hasn't really been studied before, and also because the lot of studies has shown that it does look that the plastics could resemble the smells of the fish because and the prey items because as past research has shown, some of the prey items have emitted dimethyl sulfide, which is a chemical compound, and often bacteria builds up around plastics in the oceans and it releases the similar chemical dimethyl sulfide, and so the seabird could mistake it for a prey item. And we're also looking at seeing if color is also important, and could the color also resemble the color of prey. It has been suggested in past research has shown that potentially some seabirds which have ingested red plastics because it could resemble the red krill. And so that's something which is being looking at abroad as well. And potentially the shape and size of the plastic could be very important, though a lot more research needs to be done on this, and it just opens a vast new path about sizes, weights of the plastic, what kind of weight are they more likely to ingest. Some researchers also looked at secondary ingestion, which is when the seabird prey item ingests the bird. Ingests the plastic, and then the seabird then ingests the fish, which has the plastic in it, and that has been looked at. It's been looked at abroad as well, and yeah. So we're just.
So, is there a preference demonstrated by different species? Like, have you got enough? Obviously, to get these results, you have to have dead birds, and you have to do a dissection. And like the video showed, you're pulling out bits of plastic from the digestive tract. Is your methodology species specific at the moment, or have you determined that prions or fulmars or shearwaters prefer red over yellow over green?
At the moment, we're still working on the analysis for that. Though it does from what some previous research has shown, that it could be the case, because we've seen that in some places, I believe some islands with albatrosses, I can't remember, I think it was in the subantarctics, I can't remember which species of albatross it was, but they seem to prefer red and had a lot of red plastics in it. Whereas some other albatrosses, I believe it was some Malaysian albatrosses up in the atolls, the Pacific atolls. I believe there was some volunteers working there, and they often found a bunch of white plastics as well as some red plastics being coughed up by the seabirds. So there is a chance that it could be species specific, but I'm yet to look into that a bit further. But yeah, that's definitely something on my mind.
What's your sample size so far of birds that you've dissected?
We've got about 80 to 100 birds which I've done. It's been quite a bit, and it's probably approximately over about it's been more than 5 species. Approximately less than 10, I'd say, 5 to 10 different species. Yeah.
And with the dissection and collecting and collating the plastic, so you're finding that there is a significant variation between the type of plastic that those birds in your sample have ingested, and a difference in your sample population with the colours?
Yeah, so we are definitely seeing some differences and some for some seabirds, as like I believe the Cook's petrels had a lot of tiny, really microplastic, like the very beady style ones, which most likely that was from the prey items which they're eating. And we're definitely seeing practically a range of color. We've got a lot of white plastics, some yellowish plastics, but we've also got some blues and reds as well. So we are seeing a bit of some color come up, and we're doing some more research with flesh-footed shearwaters with Wildlife Management International, and we're finding on Ohino that there's a lot of plastics also there as well with the flesh-footed shearwaters. So we're also going to look at those next time around at the end of the year, yes, and we'll be looking at the colors with them as well.
So that was an important point that you raised a moment ago, that perhaps with the Cook's petrel, that they may not be ingesting plastic because they are seeing plastic and thinking, oh, I'll grab some of that. It's actually what they are eating has already ingested the plastic, and that when the prey is dissolved, obviously what's left in the digestive tract, if it hasn't been passed, if it's small enough to pass, it probably gets out. If it's not, it's stuck in the gut. So I guess there's two facets there. Some birds might be actively seeking prey and ingesting plastic thinking that it's prey, and some are maybe not interested in plastic at all, but you're still finding plastic within them.
Yes, yeah. And sadly, there has been some actually research recently looking at, there was some work with gannets and the fish which the gannets was ingesting, and they did some work on that, and they did find plastic pieces in the fish which the gannets were ingesting. And we have a master's student who's studying plastics in the gannets now, and it seems that definitely we still don't really know the extent of it, but it does appear that like secondary ingestion is definitely involved and occurring, but also primary ingestion is another major one where the seabird does actively go and ingest the plastic, like with the flesh-footed shearwaters in Australia that time. Yeah, that's awful. Yeah.
Yeah, there is so much to learn. There's or the variation within seabirds for their methods of fishing, their preference for prey, their the size that they are taking is leaves you with several postdoc projects, I would imagine, to follow up if you want to stay in the field, Ariel. So what's the tack that you will take now with your research? How do you get access to the specimens?
Usually they might be from beach patrols. So with Birds New Zealand, they often do a lot of beach patrols along western beaches and eastern beaches. So I gather a lot of very stinky carcasses and then dissect those. And usually that can be at the museum. The museum is also a great place which has a lot of cadavers and seabirds which have been brought in. So I've often used those ones. Yeah.
Now, those photos we were looking at before, you just mentioned the museum. They're not from you dissecting at the museum, are they? That was you in the lab at the university.
Yes, somewhere at the lab at the uni. Yeah, somewhere at the museum.
Oh, okay. So they were different desks. Okay, we'll have to offline sort out which ones are which so that I can caption them correctly. I just thought you were in a different side of the room, but different room. Okay, great. Ariel, what should people do if they find a bird that is either affected? Well, we don't know. They won't know why the bird is in a situation where they can pick it up, handle it, and do something with it. Let's talk about if they find a seabird. How do you handle a seabird? Do you need to take precautions, both for your own health, but also with avian influenza whizzing its way around the northern hemisphere? Do you need to take some sort of biosecurity measure to protect other birds? Perhaps you've got cage birds or something, or maybe you've got chooks or something. If you find a bird, what should you do?
Probably the best thing to do would be to call the SPCA or Bird Care Aotearoa. And if you can get the seabird to a vet or a rehabilitation centre, that would be incredible. And also let DOC know, as the Department of Conservation, know that that there's a native seabird which has been found. And if you can also place the bird in like a little box, and if the box can have a towel, if you have don't use try not to put any like gels or oils on your hand while you're handling the bird, and try, if you have gloves, use your best to use gloves while handling the bird. But if you don't have gloves, then that's not too bad. Just make sure you sanitize between. If you handle another bird, just sanitize and wash your hands between doing that. And then take it to a rehabilitation center and or the local vet.
I think that's pretty clear, but I like to muddy the water because my brain works overtime. Just say you were on a walk and you found 3 or 4 birds that had been affected somewhere, like maybe close to a rookery or something, and you collected multiple 2, 3, 4 birds, perhaps different species even, because of the risk of influenza. If you were to handle them, obviously you're either changing disposable gloves or washing your hands and sanitizing between handling each bird, but would you also put them in separate boxes so that if it's unclear that they've ever had any contact before, you should try and maintain that separation, shouldn't you?
Yeah, and also some seabird species don't like close quarters with each other, so it could promote some little aggressive behavior. But yes, also I don't know what disease one could have, and another one may not have diseases. So yeah, it's definitely best to put them in separate boxes or put them in separate towels if you can, and put them in a box in a dark area. Yeah, definitely, to try and keep them safe from that.
And of course, it's not very likely that is going to occur, that situation. But if birds are attracted to a particular source of light, it's also quite possible that you would find more than one, and maybe not all at the same time. But if you're caring, maybe you can't get to the vet, or it's 2 days until you can actually go to the rescue centre, wherever you're going to take them. You may have a couple, or you may already be a carer, and you may have a magpie or a bird that's been hit by a car or something, in your care. Keep them isolated. Don't think because you've got one cage you can put them in the one, even if it's a big cage. Don't do it. That's the point I wanted to get across. Just keep them separated. But biosecurity risks these days are very real, so be careful. Ariel, I think we've sort of covered off on most of your research. When do you have to be complete, and then do you defend in New Zealand at University of Auckland? Will you have to defend your PhD?
Oh yes, I'll defend
the public grilling.
I'll defend that with my might. Yeah. I've got another year and a bit to go. Yes, a year and a half, I believe. Yes, and then once I submit it, I'll wait for the reviewers and the markers to get back, and then we'll defend it. Yeah.
So, basically, end of 2023 is when you'd be looking at completing, having all your revisions and everything done, and then you would be expecting to become Dr. Ariel in maybe early to mid 2024. Is that the timetable?
Oof. Yes, it's kind of very, very scary prospect, but yes.
The point of drawing out the timetable for everyone, if you're unfamiliar with the kind of guests that we have on the show generally, it's a long commitment to do this kind of work. You've generally done a master's, which might be a 2-year project after your 3 or 4 year undergrad, and then you're embarking on a 3 or 4 year process for your PhD. So you've got to like seabirds, don't you?
Oh, I love seabirds. I'll never stop loving them.
That's great. Ariel, I always ask my guests a series of questions to work out where on the spectrum, the bird nerd spectrum, you belong. So let's get into those.
Okay.
Are you a general bird nerd, or are you a strictly seabird nerd?
I would say general, probably, but more seabird.
Okay,
Not way, yeah. Midway.
So do you keep a list? Like, are you a twitcher or a list checker?
I wouldn't say I'm a twitcher, but I definitely have like a list of like which birds like I want to, especially seabirds, more seabirds, which I want to keep an eye out for.
Well, this starts to place you somewhere on the spectrum. Do you know your number?
The number of birds?
Yeah. Do you know your number on your list? How many?
Oh, yeah, there's about probably about a good 10 to 20 species. Yeah.
So your answer is not really, because some people will go 410, 352.
I mean, for seabirds, there's really only 300 species, but the ones I'm interested are the New Zealand ones I want to see. There are some ones,
So,
especially on
So
Kermadex
when we
and some
say
of
that you
the Chatham
maintain a
Islands.
list, that's a
It's a
very
short
loose terminology for you because as we determined before we went live, you've lived in various countries, you've seen birds from many parts of the world, but you haven't been keeping a list of everything you've seen. So you're way down one end of it. If we were just talking seabirds, you are compulsive, but when we're talking general bird nerdiness, you're pretty far up one end of the spectrum, I think,
Yes.
Ariel. Okay, so what's the field guide that you use when you're out spotting birds?
Oh, I use there's a hierarchy golf one for seabirds. Often I use that one, and also with shorebirds as well. There's some those field guides, and yeah, because that's the main ones. Yeah.
So you don't have like a general birds of New Zealand one that you're always referring to. You're
Oh, there I do have that one. That's like, but like for the specific ones, I go to the like
yeah.
little maps and the. Oh yes, that's that one.
So when you're out, uh, well, let's talk about where you like to go bird watching. Uh, where is your favourite? I call it yeah, your favourite haunt in your patch.
Oh, there is a little there's actually a little park which I go to down it's off there's a there usually I just go on hikes, but the one which I like to go to because I see some birds there is it's close to my place in Auckland, and it's called Waikofi. And often I used to just go on, especially during lockdown. I used to go to that place a lot, and it's just a lovely place because I often hear tuis around, fantails just hopping around, and it's just a great space. And also, uh, what else? There's another place which I go. I can't remember, but yeah, that was the main park which I like to go to. It's close by, and also it's one of the it's a very remnant of the coastal forest before pre-humans, and so it's got some lovely birds hopping around there, and it's really lovely.
I don't know where
Also
the
got some
turnoff
seabirds
is.
as well.
I don't know where the turnoff is for that park. I haven't seen it on motorway patrol. So.
Yeah.
Um, Ariel, what's your bucket list location? Where do you want to go to check out birds?
I want to go to the Kermadex and the Chatham Islands.
Ah,
I want to see those birds there.
okay, so what's the bucket list bird? What's the one that's at the top of your I really want to see it list?
I really want to see. There's a Kermadex storm petrel, and I believe it's recently just been classified as its own species, I believe. But yeah, they breed out in the Kermadex, and I would really like to see that.
And have you got it? We didn't talk about it as part of the main interview, but is there a location that you've been to apart from the park we were just talking about that you've really loved being at so far and seeing birds?
Oh, there's actually did a hike there, a trail there. There's actually a couple of locations. One of them is off near close to Thames, and they're called the Pinnacles. And I've just loved on that hike. You see a bunch of tomtits and omeromero and bellbirds as well, which have been lovely. Also, there's an island called Tirishiri Matangi, which is close by, and seen a lot of saddlebacks, quails. Also, you can see a lot of common diving petrels and grey-faced petrels there as well. And yeah, that's another lovely place to go see birds, and it's close by to Auckland as well. So it's a good trip to go to. Yeah.
Very cool. You've got so many great locations to see concentrations of birds there. So really cool. Here's the tough one. What's the best bird?
In my opinion, or like,
An open-ended question there for you, Ariel.
oh, oof. I couldn't say which is the best bird, but one of my favorite land birds or terrestrial birds would be the kokako. It has like a little blue wattle, and they've got really long legs, and they're often seen on Little Barrier, just hopping around and foraging on the ground. But they've also got a really lovely bell style call, and it's just a lovely call to hear as it resonates. And those are pretty cool birds. I got to also admire the tui, because of its wonderful acrobatics it does, and also how it has the ability to be like a gymnast and just like hang upside down on the branches, just do all these little contortion movements to get to its nectar and its flowers. And yeah, those two probably one of my favorite ones. And also the tui is not scared and is to put up a fight as well. Like it's not scared. So that I like those ones. Yeah.
Um, the kokako is North Island and South Island species. So which one's the best?
Ooh. Well, the South Island one is predict that not many people have seen the South Island. Not many people have seen the South Island one because they, I believe,
That's the one that was
it's extinct.
that was rediscovered, wasn't it? Yeah, that was
Yeah,
rediscovered.
it was extinct, rediscovered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably will still stick with the North Island one. Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably because I've
Well,
seen those ones.
well, I can't let you escape when you've said seabirds are the best and your favourite. What's the best seabird?
Oh, the best seabird. Um, the North Pacific has some really cool, funky seabirds. Probably the one which I though admire, would be there's a little in this is in New Zealand, but also these can be found around the Pacific. Is a diving petrel. There's different species of diving petrel, but the one which I more associate and with would be the common diving petrel, and it's just because they have really interesting morphology with their in terms of their brain structure, and their nasal cavity is just really different to the other seabirds, which allows them to dive up to 80 meters plus for their food. And they've also got like little blue feet, and it's just honestly they're really incredible birds, and they're quite robust and chunky. They often can be referred to as a flying penguin because they can resemble a little penguin. And so I do like those birds because like their brain structures are just so different. It's very incredible. But yeah.
Yeah, they remind me of the guillemot
Yes.
a lot, the northern
Yeah.
hemisphere bird. Okay, well, I think I just put your website up again so people can go there. I have to put in my plug. If you are not subscribed to the Bird Emergency on YouTube, you just please do. I'm trying to get 500 subscribers first, because then we can have the community tab and I can put out other information and whatnot. Just makes it better. So help me out with that. thebirdemergency.com/YouTube will take you there. Shameless plug time as well, Ariel. Your Twitter handle, you can say it for the podcast listeners.
Yeah, it's just at Ariel Heswall. So that's at ARIEL HESWALL. That's yeah.
Very, very, very good. all the Cook's Petrel community are really mad at you for not nominating the best bird of being the Cook's Petrel. But if you're listening and it's October-ish time, Bird of the Year, that's going to be birdoftheyear.org, I think you said, was the website.
Yes.
I'm sure you'll be able to find your way there from forestandbird.org.nz. I want to highlight Echo Lights for seabirds.weebly.com. I'll set a link up again for that to check out the great work that the team there are doing. And I'll also link to the University of Auckland page with their little wrap-up of some plastic pollution research, bags, balloons, as well as hard plastics that they have been focusing on, and also some Australian research. So lots to chase up there. Ariel, last shameless plug for me. If you like the show, guess what? The Bird Emergency is kind of what I do. buymeacoffee.com/birdemergency or thebirdemergency.com/coffee if you find it hard to remember things. Ariel, been great to meet you. Great work you're doing on Twitter. That's obviously how I found out about what you're doing, because I'm not seeing the New Zealand media. Keep up the good work. Good luck with the PhD studies. We're looking forward to maybe speaking with you again a little bit down the track, and I hope I'll be able to say it's Dr. Ariel joining us this time. Thanks.
That would be great. But thank you so much. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for everyone who has been watching, and to those of you listening, do subscribe to the podcast feed. Do check out thebirdemergency.com on all the general socials. birdemergency.com/Facebook, birdemergency.com/Twitch, and of course thebirdemergency.com at YouTube. Ariel, this has been the Bird Emergency. Thank you for joining us. I'm Grant Williams. I'm a bird nerd. That's Ariel Heswall. She's a seabird nerd. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Thank you.